speaking of someone who has kids, who also has young kids, and who's doing gay parenting like I am, let's bring in our friend of Pivot. Chasten is a former school teacher who was catapulted into the public eye in 2019 when his husband, Pete Buttigieg, became the first openly gay man to run for president. He's the author of I Have Something to Tell You for Young Adults, an adaptation of his earlier book about coming of age as a young man in northern Michigan, which I interviewed him about. Welcome, Chasten. How you doing?
Hey, doing well. Thanks for having me.
So you first published your memoir in 2020. The new book is billed as a complete rewrite for young adults, focusing more on your younger years. Talk about the new version of your story. And then, of course, we'll get into things have changed since 2020, gotten worse in many ways, and especially around young people. So why don't you talk, why make this new version of your story?
Yeah, when I started 2 years ago, I was just thinking about writing the book that I wanted to hand my younger self, the book I wish I could have read in 8th grade. The political landscape was not what it was, not what it is today. I did not think that this book would be coming out in a time when we were talking about book bans, especially a backslide in LGBTQ rights. But what I really just wanted to do was write the book that I knew teachers and parents could use, especially young people.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And of course, you're taking this book on tour. Several states have been banning books, as you said. What's the reception like? Because this is a book that would presumably be banned.
Yeah, I mean, the conversations I've been having across the country so far have been great. I sold out my hometown, which was very humbling. 675 people in northern Michigan wanted to have that conversation. And I can tell that people want to be on the right side of history. And people in the LGBTQ community and their allies, are feeling a little helpless and wondering what they can do. And, even if this book is just one little tool that helps, that's great. But the reception has been phenomenal. Now I'm getting ready to head down to Texas, Florida, Missouri, and Utah. So we'll see. But, we've sold out Florida. So that's exciting. And I think that's because people, one, need that space, want to feel like they belong, and two, want to have that conversation.
And what are your thoughts on the bannings? Because again, this is a book that presumably some mom for liberty or whatever, against liberty, would push against.
Oh, yeah, because it features the existence of a queer person.
Yes, that's right.
I taught 8th grade. I'm a dad. I wrote a completely age appropriate book. So I think if it's banned, that's just politics. I, as you can probably attest to, Scott, and Kara, we all read books featuring mostly or only straight people growing up for 13
That's
years.
correct.
Every movie I watched, every book I read featured
too.
straight people, and I was not indoctrinated into being straight. I think a lot of the conversations around book banning and, parental rights and education is really just a guise to, erase LGBTQ people, or at least scare teachers and parents and families into, not talking about their existence. It's very far removed from what I think most people want elected officials to be focusing on, but it's really easy for the other side right now. Hate is so easy. This divisive topic is so easy. They've even acknowledged that they threw everything at the wall. They wanted to see what would stick, and what stuck was attacking LGBTQ people, specifically young, vulnerable trans kids.
Yeah, that's the first spot.
So you're an educator. There's so much controversy right now over if and when the topic of sexual orientation is introduced under the auspices of health, but in an educational setting. If, when is it appropriate? To what extent are parents involved, if at all? What are your thoughts? Because you're right at that kind of critical age, right? 13, when kids start exploring their sexuality, puberty. What are your thoughts as an educator about how we thoughtfully talk about these issues in a school setting?
One of the things I think is getting twisted in this conversation is that educators aren't able to have conversations with students appropriately. I mean, educators have always been revered as the educated person in the room, right? Yep. And so we have twisted this conversation into thinking that, teachers are indoctrinating your students. They're talking about really inappropriate things, but nobody had a problem with that. We were coming up in school when teachers were having those conversations. So one, it kind of boggles my mind that we're coming back to the conversation about what teachers should and should not be talking about, because it pertains to LGBTQ people. One of the things that I have always believed is that safety comes first. So outside of having conversations about development, I think that one of the things people have been really scared about with the Don't Say Gay bill and concerned about teachers and students is, will a student be outed to their parents? And is it the responsibility of a school to out a kid to a family who might not be as accepting or won't be as accepting? Will it put that kid in danger? I think across the board, I leave that to administrations and parents. I think parents should be involved in their kids' education. That's another thing. People say that this is about parental rights. It's about parental involvement. As a teacher, I remember what it was like to only have one or two parents come to parent-teacher conferences. So that conversation on when is it appropriate and who should be involved, I think everyone should be involved and at the table. If a parent is not ready for their kid to have a conversation, they should totally come to the administration or come to the teacher and have that conversation. But I think having those conversations in good faith. Is it just about a conversation about the existence of LGBTQ people? That to me is completely appropriate.
So when you're thinking about, in this book, you write a lot about the pressure to blend in, remain closeted, go along with anti-gay messaging around you. I understand that. I remember that, and it's very fearful. And especially when your parents are not, my dad died, but I would say my mother was hostile to it for a very long time. I can't believe today this is happening again with this kind of thing. Because at the time it was so furtive and so damaging emotionally, personally, just in every single way. Do you think it's going back? Because what it was like was terrible. But do you feel like that? And what do you wish you had known as a teen when you're thinking about what's happening now?
Well, what I wish I would have known as a teen was that it was okay to be myself. For a long time, I thought I was the only gay person in the world. Then I had role models in Ellen DeGeneres and, Jack on Will and Grace,
Sean.
That's all
Hayes.
I had. So yeah, Sean Hayes. So I had very limited, visibility into what it was like in a wider queer world out there. But I see two different things. When I'm out here on book tour, when I'm talking to people around the country, I see so many good people committed to the work who want to get it right, who care deeply about either being a good ally or protecting the LGBTQ community. And then I see in politics, I do feel like it is backsliding. And I do believe it got better. It was getting better. Right? When I grew up, I never thought I would be able to get married. I never thought I'd be able to be a dad. Those things are true for me now. So technically it did get better. But I think because it was getting better, now people are committed to making it worse. The ideas of equality, the ideas of acceptance terrify some people on the right. And I also have to say, I don't think every person on the right believes it. I think they're just going along with it because it works.
That's
great for clicks.
True.
Great for clout, great for cash. It's just a great fundraising opportunity, and it's easier to, attack people and be hateful rather than focus on getting something done on gun legislation, right? And so I think it's this sort of twisted movement in their party to just focus on attacking queer people because it's easy. But I do believe in many places it is getting worse, and it will only get better if more and more people are committed to making it better.
What gave you comfort? Was it friends? Was it certain literary works? Was it a confidential conversation with a teacher? Like what, if we were to say, distinct to the politics, how do we create an ecosystem or context of comfort? What would you suggest?
But to be honest, Scott, I didn't have any of those things. And so one of the things I always celebrate every Pride is the fact that I'm here. Because when I was younger, I just really didn't think I would make it. I didn't have any teachers I could open up to. When the bullying and the homophobia was really bad, I didn't think I could go to the administration because I thought they would hate me too. We never had that conversation in my family. I didn't really have any role models. I got a scholarship my senior year of high school to study abroad in Germany. It was not because I cared so much about the German language or the culture. I just wanted to get the hell out of Northern Michigan. And that was my ticket out. And then I made friends. It was the first time I had a friend who told me it was okay to be gay. And that gave me the confidence to go home and bust down the closet door. The thing I want people to know, especially parents, is that I could have benefited from a 10-second conversation with them when I was younger. If they sat me down and said, it's okay to be yourself, no, whether you're gay, straight, bi, trans, whoever you are, we will love you unconditionally. And you will always have two parents who love you and a roof over your head. We promise.
Which does not happen with a lot of parents, which does not.
Right.
What one way people get that more recently is through social media, or years ago, AOL was one way, Planet Out, all kinds of stuff. But also, there's so much homophobia now. Twitter's owner uses it to spread homophobic conspiracy theories, for example, about Paul Pelosi.
Mm-hmm.
It's full of, on the negative side. It used to be quite a positive thing, social media, because you could find people like you. A lot of people talked about that. Did you use that? Did you use social media? And what do you suggest for kids now? Because it's a mixed bag now. It's not supportive in lots of places.
It's funny. I was just talking to some young people. I said, when I studied abroad in Germany and I made those really good friends from all over the country, it's the first time I made friends who affirmed my identity. I was telling them that our Facebook group was the thing that, gave me hope. And these young people said Facebook was around in 2006. Made me feel really old. But yeah, I certainly remember as a young person, like logging online and being able to chat with those friends and feeling like I had community, I had connection. And now, you know what it's like to open Twitter. I open Twitter and it's like I just get punched in the face with homophobia and hate, and the algorithm's all messed up.
You
and I
particularly,
I don't enjoy being on there because it's just so messy. And I worry about, I'm an adult. I can handle that. I understand why people are saying some of the things they are. But I worry about young people logging on there and not being able to discern between what's real, what's not, what's a bot, what isn't. And questioning their identity and their worth and their humanity every day when they go on social media. So that is 100. Something I'm very worried about.
Yeah, it's changed rather drastically. It used to be quite supportive, and now it's just full of really nasty stuff. You had an approach, let me quote you in your book, about bullies. Speaking of which, it's always best to ask someone to explain their question or insult when you sense it's meant to harm you. Bullies often recoil when they have to explain their meanness. Just ask, what do you mean by that? And give them time to explain. They usually are weak or silly, their point is. Who would you like to challenge today, for example, as you travel around?
To ask them what they mean by that?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
There's so many people on the right who are just behaving like children. The thing that boggles my mind, not only as a parent, but as a former teacher, is the fact that I held my students, and I think across the country, we hold 8th graders to a higher standard of decorum and ethics than we do our representatives.
Yeah.
And the fact that they go out here with these wild, disgusting accusations, just sweeping accusations about all LGBTQ people, I want them to answer for that, especially people who get microphones put in front of their face every day and aren't often challenged. I don't want to repeat some of those accusations, but you know what they are.
Yeah.
And I think, more people, especially in positions of power, should be forced to explain why they're using those words and give us some evidence.
Yeah.
When kids always said something weird in the classroom, I always asked for the evidence. Where'd you hear that? Where'd you read it? Where'd you see it? And it's just so easy for them to lie right now. But some of these people who have a grip on the Republican Party, they're so detached from reality and the things that people are focusing on. And they really do remind me of the worst kind of playground bullies.
Absolutely. Scott?
I like what you said about the importance of parents just committing or ensuring their kids know that they're loved no matter what. Do you think that dads who have sons at some point need to expand on that and say, no matter what, regardless of how you do in school, what your sexual orientation is? Do you think that should be that explicit? Because I do think a lot of families do say we love you no matter what, but the kid doesn't think, no, not really.
Oh, that was me. That was me. My parents were so loving and so giving and the kindest people, but we didn't talk about gay people. So I assumed that love was conditional. If they found out I was gay, then that would go away. And so definitely the conversation has to be about unconditional love. And when I was growing up in, rural Michigan, I thought, unless you were playing hockey or football, super athletic, driving the pickup truck, then you weren't a man, and I think those conversations have to be explicit. I want you to grow up to be who you are. I will love you for who you are. Whether you're gay, straight, bi, trans, whatever, whether you're academically gifted or you're athletically gifted, I want you to know that it is safe to be yourself. And I want you to grow up knowing that I will always be here for you unconditionally, because I knew my parents were so loving, but I did think that love was conditional. What if they found out the big secret? Would they hate me? Would I lose everything? And I was that kid questioning whether or not I should stick around because I didn't want to embarrass them. And parents have to know the power of their words and their actions. I mean, not only parents, everybody. The power in your words and your actions to make people want to stick around.
Yeah. I think one of the things is they're still hurting from losing so much over the many years to gays and lesbians. You know what I mean? Normal, like marriage and kids and everything else. But your book is geared toward young LGBTQ plus readers. What straight people, you want straight people to read it, right? Because one of the things that surprises me, and it literally happened the other day, we're talking about a trans issue. And I was like, transgender people are often kicked out of the house, et cetera, particularly gay people are. I certainly had my share of difficulty. And they were like, really? Does that happen? Like, I literally was like, where have you been? Like, do you ever, do you know any trans people? Do you know? It was sort of shocking. I was like, it's 2023 and you haven't understood this at a very basic level. So you want straight people presumably to read this? Because sometimes I'm like, you're kidding me, straight people. Like, you're kidding
100%.
me.
I want parents to read this. I hope it's helpful for teachers. I included some resources in the back of the book for them. And you're absolutely right, especially about trans people. Every time I have sat down and had a roundtable with trans students or just, trans people in general, the room is never just full of happy stories. It's never like, yeah, I'm trans and everything's great.
Yeah.
Which is it. If you are talking to people who don't know that, it's alarming. The thing that I want straight people especially to understand is that when you are presented with something new, at least when I am presented with something new, the first thing you should do, first thing I always try to do, slow down and listen and learn. And right now, especially with trans issues, we need straight people to understand that every major medical organization in this country approves of gender affirming care, right? Psychiatric organizations, educational organizations, you have all these people talking about the benefits and the life-saving benefits of affirming trans people. And then you have a political party that's, raging war against them. Rather than meeting trans people where they're at, rather than sitting down with these organizations, medical organizations, mental health organizations, they don't care.
They want them to be dead. They want them to be dead. That is the only explanation.
And that's, when we're saying, what do you mean by that? Explain that. That's what I want them to boil it down to. Because if you don't believe that, then show me how you're showing up for trans people. If you truly believe that they are worthy of dignity and life, then show me how you're making sure that they know that they can exist freely and openly and safely in America today. So my book, yes, is, I hope hopefully helpful for young people, any person, part of our ever growing acronym. If as long as you're not straight, I feel like everyone's just getting othered and the acronym will just keep growing. And hopefully it's helpful for young people, but I really hope it's helpful for their parents and the people that love them.
Yeah, I just hit them on the head with the book itself. But Scott, last question, and then I have one final one.
I'm curious if you have any thoughts. There's a bit of a fissure in the gay community, the notion that gender affirming care in some ways might threaten the gay community. I've heard some fairly well-known gay journalists say that they're worried that, or they seem, I just found it odd that they're not very supportive, quite frankly. And
I agree.
And it creates, in my view, and I'm putting my bias here, a dangerous level of confusion and validation that, well, if look what gay people are saying about this. Any thoughts?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I mean, white cisgender gay men have not always been the most inclusive within the community. And it's not just as a gay person, just as a human being. I am not threatened by trans people, and I have lost nothing because trans people exist. I don't go through my life wondering or thinking about the existence of other people and how, that threatens my identity or my existence. Going to Starbucks or going to Target and getting my kids from daycare and, doing all those things. I'm not threatened by the existence of trans people. And I also feel like we have such an obligation as a community to recognize that the way we treat, the most marginalized in our community is a reflection upon how we treat ourselves. And I know that I get to walk through life with more privileges than most trans people do. And isn't it my responsibility to turn around and offer a hand and pull other people up and to fight for other people. But the fact that some people might be so moved as to reject the existence of other people,
Yep.
in our community, some people in our community have to realize that they're not just coming for trans people.
They are not.
It's not going to stop there. And we have to show up for everyone.
They're not. You know what I call them, Chasten? We call them, Scott, just so you know, those gays. We know who they are. And we always go, oh, those gays. That's kind of, it's really disheartening to hear that. It really is, because they're coming for you. They're coming for you next. That's what they're doing. And you just don't.
Well, they've already said it too, right? I mean, they've
They
already
are
said it in a
coming for
multitude
you.
of ways. But how do you go through life with all that privilege and just see that growth
Yep.
and progress in our country, but realize that it was on the backs of other people who fought for you either
That's
generations
correct.
ago or who still fight for you right now? So
Yep.
if we're truly a community, then you show up for everyone in your community.
100%. Last question I have, Chasten. What do you think life will be like for gay teens in 20 years? I honestly have been worried for the first time in a lot of years since having so many kids, and you have kids. I felt very positive. I thought, oh, the world only spins forward, as they say in Angels in America. But I'm a little bit worried, more than I've ever been. I don't know why, but I just feel like, just like that, they're coming back once again. What would you like it to be like, and what do you think it might be like?
I hope one day my kids ask me like why I needed to write a book like this in the first place, that it becomes so irrelevant. The fact that we had to have a book that helps young people understand that it's okay to be themselves. I think as a parent, as you all know, you're just always terrified of everything, all the time. But I have this mixture of fear and hope, because when I travel the country and I meet people who are doing the work, I realize that it's so removed from the noise machine of Washington and the people who get the microphones and the power, but those people also get to cast the votes.
They're also passing those bills. I mean, the anti-drag queen stuff. Oh, come on.
So I see like an upcoming generation, and I see the fire in their eyes, and I see the people who love them rallying around them, and I see that hope and I see that action, but then I see people passing these bills and passing that legislation. So if we can find a right way to garner that support and energy and kick these people out of office, I want to hold on to that hope, because I feel like if you just can't give up hope, right? And it's easier to hold on when other people are holding on to you. And so I think for me, that work, especially that very visible work, is just about surrounding myself with the people who I know are on the right side of history, doing the right thing, and want to continue doing the right thing. Because if I focus on the noise machine, then it'll just beat us all down. So
yes, well, that's why you're from the Midwest and I'm from New York. So we're manning the barricades over here. I'm growing children for my militia. Anyway, the book is called "I Have Something to Tell You" for young adults by Chasten Buttigieg. It's available now. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
All right, Scott. Oh, I like him so much. He's such a good guy. Such a good guy.